Hi, I'm Jess. I am the founder and CEO of a startup called RockPaperRobot. We make kinetic and connected furniture. You don't have to understand what that means yet. You can still follow along. About a year ago, though, we closed a round of seed funding. And this involved drawing up a bunch of legal documents, one of which delineates the potential risk factors involved in the investment. It's basically an itemized list of every conceivable way that I could fail. Because we are a tech furniture company, this document's panoply of reasons that the investors could lose all of their money obviously includes everything from changes in ergonomic standards to raw material market fluctuations to war. War was in the document. And then there's section 6.2. Our operations depend almost exclusively on the performance and continued service of yours truly, our founder, sole shareholder, and CEO. The loss of our services would adversely affect our ability to effectively pursue our business strategy, and you would most likely result in the loss of your investment. We do not maintain key person life insurance on Miss Banks. Now, this jargon doesn't scare investors, but it fucking freaked me out, okay? And it wasn't so much the life insurance part, because like I'd be dead. But the thing is, I'm an inventor, and I make things that the patent office and I think don't exist already. So things that other people are going to use and covet. And so don't be fooled by all the stuff you see around you, okay? It's really hard to make something that doesn't exist yet, really hard. Yet my company actually depends on me to continuously do this, come up with stuff that doesn't exist yet. Thing was, up to this point, no one had ever required me to invent something. I definitely had not seen it written down on paper. So I totally freaked, and I was like, called up my lawyer, sort of panicked. I said, are we covered if I have some kind of product block, or what? What if I can't perform, or like I can't, can tirelessly output culturally relevant products on things that pertain? And he's like, you mean like Bob Dylan? He was mocking me, which actually is a pretty cogent point, except for the war kind of helped Bob Dylan's career. So I realized I was pretty much alone with this mounting realization that I had no creative process, or at least didn't have any idea how to identify it. Basically, what I had was, if this ball was a thought, then this is what it feels like in my head. I just kind of walked around with a bucket or something. I don't know what my process was doing. Now, though, I felt totally compelled to figure out if there was some possible way to actually guarantee generation of novelty. So I did some research. I read all the eureka stories about falling apples and soaring kites and self-devouring snakes. I watched a ton of talks. I watched a ton of talks about people, indulgently romanticizing their creative processes. I went to Burning Man, all just to kind of try to figure out how I came up with stuff. And then I did. Rewind. When I was a junior in high school, don't do the math, I went blind over the course of 36 hours. And this was an actual physical blindness. It wasn't psychological. Something actually happened to my eyes. And though I wasn't aware at all of what the trauma was, there was no recollection of some kind of incidental thing. And the doctors didn't know what it was when we went in, and they didn't know if I would see again, and they didn't know what caused it. But it turned out what had happened I had gotten somehow severe corrosions on my corneas. And I even started a minor epidemic. I was the first of 9 cases, none of whom I had known, so it probably wasn't contagious. But it was a really painful, terrifying experience. After about a week, I started to see these like light shadows, kind of like what I see right here, coming back. And then another week, and my eyes actually healed. And they healed better than my previous 20/20 vision, okay? But what also happened, so I got kind of like a natural LASIK, sort of, okay? Which is really kind of lucky, except for I also got increased peripheral acuity. So I can see stuff better out here now, okay? The result of this one was that as much as this might sound like some kind of a superpower, it actually gave me kind of a convergence dyslexia, something that I was only diagnosed with like a decade after this happened when I went to MIT. And so this conducive dyslexia is like a slight problem with the coordination of the eyes. The result of this means that it makes it kind of hard for me to maintain focus on things, definitely on reading, but also at some other strange vantages. And my eyes get extremely tired, and then sometimes I see things that don't exist. So things that look like they're smashing into each other, or being reflected, or floating, or covered in glass shards. This happens to me. And so I make mistakes. And it's kind of like the visual analog to mishearing lyrics of a song. Now, my brain sorts this out in seconds, very quick, way quicker than a decade of singing Dawn's Early Light in the Star Spangled Banner. But before this happens, where my brain kind of catches up with what's up, I essentially experience a physiological equivalent of belief in something that doesn't physically exist. Okay. Here comes the part of the talk where I kind of start to lose my scientific footing, but bear with me. I believe that my best creative sparks are simply the result of an empirical error from my eyes. And when it happens, it feels very different than conjuring something or imagining. And sure, I am educationally primed to intellectually take advantage of this feature, and this is very, very important. It's part of this whole thing. But my point is that this is not some heady, cerebral process, but actually kind of an anticlimactic, passive state. That being said, it is cognitively and chemically indistinguishable from the functional truth that I usually assume my senses afford me. So for me, the not real is real. Fortunately for my investors, this means that I am a little hardwired or guaranteed to continually do this. But don't fret, because as learning from this, it's very possible we can devise tactics to actually facilitate these experiences. Okay, so thank you for waiting, and now I'm going to show you some of the things that I saw wrong. But first, I would like you to look at me and cross your eyes. And notice, if you can, the negative space in between the two me's. Okay, this is our signature piece. It's a levitating table, and we call it float. My dad. So float is actually a matrix of magnetized wooden cubes that levitate with respect to one another. Of course, wood can't really be magnetized, so they're hollow, and we just embed repelling magnets into the adjacent faces, pairs of faces. If you look closely, you can see the repelling cubes are actually held together by flexible steel cables. And so the whole thing wants to be apart, and we're just holding it together. But this was, to me, just what had happened before. It was negative space between two other tables I was looking at, and I thought that they were somehow on top of each other or next to each other. And it turns out that this is actually really quite stable. So even though you can smush around on the corners, if you actually distribute the mass of something over a couple of the cubes, you have a totally stable table. And we make floating shelves, too. They levitate off the wall, which is even more counterintuitive. Even when I made it, I was like, I don't know, it's gonna not work. I can't. Okay, so, and then the table below that, that's a giant concrete diamond balancing on its point, except for it's not concrete and it's not balancing. It's 41 pieces of corian that are all glued up and then suspended from an internal structure. This is a terrible movie, but it's an example of a robotic chandelier that can respond to the environment. So it could, if you have a big party, it can be big, and then if you sit down for dinner, come in, be small. This one was interesting. So notice the light, it's hard to tell almost where the light's coming from, if it's coming from the top or the bottom or source. Sometimes for me, because of my peripheral acuity, birds are extremely distracting and they scare me. But here, it was kind of like, well, sometimes the birds and the shadows get mixed up. This is a table. This is one of our new ones. So this is a table that we just started producing for a broader demographic of people. So it stores flat on the wall, and it can come down and out to any length. It can be a shelf or a desk or a dinner table or a banquet table, and then you can store it right back up. And the cool thing about it, one of the cool things, is that you can change the whole surface. So you can, let's say you have a brick wall. You can upload a picture of your brick wall, print it out, and we'll send you slats that match it. It'll camouflage in. And then when you bring your table down, your brick wall will ooze down. Not that that would ever happen. Someone asked us after we made these tables, they said, what do you do with the chairs? And we were like, I'll be right back. Thank you, advisor. So we made these chairs to go with them. And this is how they work. They're the only, to my knowledge, foldable ergonomic chairs. They have lumbar support, and they fold really quickly. They're super lightweight with a string, and then they pop out forward. And sometimes when I watch you guys and other people looking at what I make, I wonder if maybe what happened in my eyes was contagious after all. No, I'm just kidding. That was a lame TED ending. Actually, I'm pretty sure I just fell asleep with one of those teenage acne face masks on, and it got in my eyes. I just made a stupid mistake. Thanks for listening.